pictures of the royals leaving. We saw them arriving around about an hour or so ago, going into the chapel for the Easter service. The King was widely expected to make his first official public appearance since his cancer diagnosis last month, and he did, alongside Camilla, his wife, the Queen, and several others in the royal family, including his brothers and sister as well. The Wales is, of course, not expected to attend today, as Catherine, Princess of Wales, deals with her own cancer diagnosis. But the King and Queen in St George's Chapel as we approach lunchtime. And just outside is our correspondent, Katie Spencer. And Katie, a good turnout amongst the crowds. People wanted to get a first glimpse of the King in public since his cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, it's rather sweet, actually. Where we are, there's lots of people that have gathered, sadly, because we are the other side of the castle walls. We're not expecting to see anyone come our way, but there has been a real feeling, really, I think, from those who have gathered here, that they want the King to know that he has everyone's support, that people can relate to what he's going through. It was a very quick appearance that we saw as the King went inside St George's Chapel, also as he came out again. We weren't expecting it to be too long, to be honest. It's a very cold day here in Windsor, but also it wasn't an event that was going to be him walking around and meeting lots of people. We know inside of the walls of the castle, the staff that work within Windsor and a number of members of the public who were here a bit earlier, they were allowed inside to wait. You may have seen as the King went inside, someone shouted Happy Easter, and he said and to you as well. It's a very quick and brief interaction, but more importantly, this was about what it represented. I think for the King, we're told that he's been hugely frustrated. He is someone that likes to be out and about, that likes to work, that likes to meet people, and he has found this whole process of having to take a step back from public appearances incredibly frustrated, we are told. So this was him wanting to show that he could come out, that he could lead his family still, and that he wasn't somebody that was hiding away. So we saw today as well that he was very steady on his feet. He looks in good spirits, seemed to be happy as well. So this was important, I think. He wanted to be here just to show everyone that he isn't hiding away, that he is still very much leading the monarchy, and that he's determined to get back to work.
We are seeing some people leaving the chapel right now, Katie, not members of the royal family as yet. And we're going to stay on these shots from St George's Chapel in Windsor as we await the King and Queen and other members of the royal family leaving as that service comes to an end. The obligatory selfie being taken there as people come out as well. But there we go, a few shots of the crowd. And as you can see, a few members of the congregation starting to filter out after that service for Easter Sunday. Apparently it concluded with a rendition of God Save the King, with King Charles III in attendance. And what you were saying there, Katie, very much echoed by my last guest, Robert Hardman, the biographer of the King, saying he very much enjoys being amongst the crowds. But of course, if you are being treated for cancer, doing that is not straightforward at the best of times, of course, when you're the monarch. But if your health is a bit of an issue, then mixing it with crowds, as we know from recent years, of course, all of us, is not the ideal scenario.
Absolutely, but I think certainly for the King it must be a hugely frustrating thing to have to step away when you are so used to be out and about meeting members of the public. We're told actually after this service today it's likely that the King and Queen are going to be taking a few days certainly at least, to spend some time on their own, and the King no doubt will be hoping within the next few months he can step up the number of public appearances that he hopes wants to make. It's said that the King certainly is hoping to be out over the summer in time for the D-Day anniversary, but all that will be reliant on no doubt the advice from his doctors, which currently is, because he's going through chemotherapy, that you have to have that separation because your immunity is compromised when you're going through chemotherapy. But it has been interesting to see how he has been, just in the brief moments we've seen walking into church, certainly a smile on his face, certainly showing no sign of looking unsteady on his feet, wanting to show people that he is the man that he was, that he is still leading the monarchy and determined to get back to work.
We've got a shot of a little boy holding an Easter bouquet outside St George's Chapel now. Looks like he's in his school uniform, maybe cadet's uniform, hard to tell. And I do wonder if he's holding that to give to someone as they come out. It looks like he's being told what to do. In fact, he looks slightly overwhelmed by the situation. You can't blame him. It's all a bit odd. Cameras trained on him like ours, waiting for the King to come out. But he's holding a really nice Easter bouquet, very colourful, and looks like he's about to give it to someone. And he's probably realised, hang on a minute, there's quite a few eyes on me right now. This is all a bit strange. But he looks like he's got a mate for company there. We're just waiting for them to come out, Katie. I know you can't necessarily see it where you are, but the crowd's very much in attendance. And that's been true of what the King has done since he ascended to the throne. There has been, on balance, goodwill towards him, positive response on the streets when crowds turn out to see the monarch having taken over from his mother, Queen Elizabeth II.
Absolutely, and I would say, if anything, over the years it has been sort of levelled at the royal family that at times they've struggled to make a connection with the general public. But what I would say, from what we've seen certainly within the last month or so, has been so many people, there's cancer journey that the royal family are going on at the moment. It has resonated with so many people that you talk to at events like these. Of course, cancer affecting so many of our lives, and so many people currently undergoing treatment for cancer themselves. And you do talk to members of the public here who turn out, and I think actually it seems to be forging a much deeper connection with the royal family to know that they have been so open about what they're going through. What will be interesting when we see those pictures from inside St George's Chapel a little later on will be to see whether or not, and one would assume it probably has been the case, that the King and Queen themselves inside the chapel probably had some level of distancing that has been enforced as well, because on doctors' orders, the King has been asked certainly to keep away from people because of his compromised immunity, because of chemotherapy. So one would assume that certainly within inside St George's Chapel as well, there probably would be that element of distancing, which we'll see later on when we see the pictures from inside the chapel.
We're trying to get a good look at the King's tie as well as he arrived. Robert Hardman, as I mentioned there, his biographer, said the King often likes to give away some sort of a message with his tie. Apparently one of his favourite ones is of a Tyrannosaurus Rex pattern. T-Rex being a pun on C-Rex, Charles Rex. Charles the King, for those who aren't familiar with their Latin. Of course, there was a story a few months back about him wearing a Greek tie. We know because Robert told us that, of course, his father, the late Duke of Edinburgh, had Greek heritage. His grandfather was Prince Andrew of Greece, and he's worn a Greek tie before. I don't think he was wearing his Greek tie this time. It was blue. It looked like it had boats on it to my untrained eye, but we can't quite zoom in enough to find out. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one, just as we watch these pictures of, I think this must be a family there.
He does.
Yeah, sorry, Katie, go on.
I was just going to say he does have a terrific sense of humour, and for the times that we've seen, because he has taken his royal boxes, we know from the pictures that we've seen over the last month since he's had this diagnosis, he's been meeting ambassadors, but what you don't see in photos and just sort of still images of the King is his terrific sense of humour. So that's why it has been so nice really to see him entering church today with a big smile on his face, because part of what we know about him is his sense of humour. So yeah, I think that's been missed in some respect, really.
Now, it looks like there's a family of four, we don't know for sure who they are, standing outside the chapel, but a man, a woman and two little boys, one of whom is holding a bouquet of Easter flowers in white and yellow, and it looks like they're standing there ready to give it away. You wouldn't bet against them giving it to either the King or the Queen as they come out. A few people have already filtered out of St George's Chapel at the end of the Easter service there on this Easter Sunday, and we are waiting the rest of the royals and the congregation to come out. As we waited for the King and the Queen to arrive and go in, we did see the Princess Royal, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, the now Duke of Edinburgh, going in as well with their spouses. Now we just await them coming out as we approach midday here on Sky News. We're going to stay with these pictures as we wait to see the King again. Just a reminder, it's his first official public appearance since his diagnosis of cancer last month. That came off the back of a prostate examination the King was having, fairly routine for an enlarged prostate, not unusual for a man of 75, but it turned out that a diagnosis of cancer, we're not specific about the cancer, that has not been shared, but a diagnosis of cancer nonetheless followed soon after that. And since then, the King has been treated for that. He has been carrying out royal duties, but behind closed doors, still having meetings, still talking to people, still doing his job. He has a voracious appetite for work. We know he works something like 8 hours a day, every day, Christmas Day included, apparently, and keen to get back on his feet and out there. And that's what we've seen already today, Katie. We saw the King and the Queen turn up, a brief glimpse of them as they went into St George's Chapel, but sending out a message that he wants to carry on, get on with it, do his job in a role he waited a long time for, but one he is very much enjoying.
Well, you were speculating just who might be the family might be giving those flowers to. If not the King, then certainly it's likely to be Queen Camilla, who has in the last month really had to step up the number of royal events that she has had to cover for. And I was at the Maundy Thursday service that took place in Worcester a few days ago, and we saw her just stepping in to fill those shoes.
It is midday. You're watching Sky News today. We're staying with these live pictures from Windsor, and that is St George's Chapel. You're seeing the exit there. We're expecting to see King Charles III and his wife, the Queen, Camilla, exit after the traditional Easter Sunday service that's been taking place there. You can see plenty of crowds have gathered, the Welsh flag very much obvious there as people await to see a second glimpse of the King. They saw him going in around about an hour ago. Brief moment, he waved to the crowds, seemed happy to be there, and now we are waiting for them to leave. Members of the congregation filtering out there past that family, that little boy, waiting to give his bouquet of Easter flowers away to someone, more than likely Camilla. And our correspondent, Katie Spencer, is still with me on the line from Windsor. And the weather's pretty good as well. Pretty warm day in Windsor today for Easter Sunday, Katie, which means even easier for the crowds to turn out and show their appreciation for the monarch.
Well, dare I correct you slightly? It's actually freezing cold here, so that might be why we saw the King rush in slightly quickly. But nevertheless, doesn't it show you actually how much support there is for the King? We're outside of the castle here, where we're standing. The pictures that you're seeing are from inside the castle, and there's just as many people outside of the castle grounds, even though they probably won't see the King. We don't think the King's car is going to be driven this way, but so many people, despite the cold, wanting to turn out and just show their support for the family as they go through this difficult time. For the King himself, I really do think this is about sending a much bigger message, really. It's not really, it was never conceived as an event where he's going to be meeting the public, shaking hands and what have you. He can't do that at the moment. He's under doctor's orders that he needs to keep himself away from the public, as anyone who is going through chemotherapy has to go through. Your immunity is compromised, so you cannot be meeting too many people. And I believe we can see him on our screens coming out now, can we?
Yes, you're right. We can see the King and the Queen now coming out after that service, and Queen Camilla talking to that little boy who is handing over his lovely Easter bouquet, handshake for his efforts, and to his mate, could be his brother, who knows, and the others as well. And this is, well, it's a microcosm, isn't it, of what the king would prefer to be doing on Easter Sunday, which is meeting the crowds. But here he is chatting to this foursome who've waited patiently outside at the end of the Easter Sunday service. And
a lot of those people who are within the grounds, they are members of staff who work at Windsor Castle, or there are also a small number of members of the public who turned out here earlier today. So it may be that the family that you're seeing on the screens just a minute ago, they may be people that work for Windsor, but it is, the point of this is it is a much more controlled and manageable environment for the royal team to engineer King Charles being out, but not having to interact with too many people.
The cameraman or camera operator, I should say, just moving there as the king goes and talks to the crowds outside St George's Chapel. He's shaking hands, as is the Queen. The camera just moving there. Here's a different angle, and we can see very proudly holding up the Welsh flag and surrounding the Union Jack. People in the crowd sending or passing over messages. And he's doing what he would like to do. We heard from Robert Hardman earlier, the King's biographer of a recently released book about King Charles III, that this is the kind of thing he has missed since his diagnosis. He is shaking hands with people in the crowd. And we know he is obviously currently undergoing treatment for cancer. But it's making that connection with people who've waited patiently, well, in the cold, as Katie corrected me there, in Windsor. It looks a bit overcast there. The King in a coat, one hand in his pocket, shaking hands and chatting to the crowds there. And this has been, long overdue, really, Katie. This kind of thing the King has not been able to do in recent weeks because of his cancer diagnosis, but we heard it was frustrating for him not to be able to meet people who patiently turned out to see him.
Absolutely, and I think perhaps in terms of his vulnerability, perhaps it is a consideration that he is outside in the open air, so that again sort of helps when it is a sort of public-facing moment like this. But yeah, you're right, he hasn't had the opportunity really to do anything like this since we heard of his cancer diagnosis last month. It is Queen Camilla that has had to step up for most of the events that the King was due to attend, including Maundy Thursday, which was arguably the sort of biggest event that he's had to miss out on up until now. He was, we were told, determined to make it for Easter Sunday today. And what a difference it makes really to see him like this. I think in any of the photographs that we've seen of him and the work that he's been doing in Buckingham Palace, privately on those red boxes, but also in terms of meeting with ambassadors in these more controlled settings, it is nice to see how he is in himself. I think certainly if he wasn't able to do this, doctors wouldn't be allowing him to be out and about. He is out, he's looking strong and steady on his feet. There is a smile on his face, and it is just nice to really get a sense of how he is doing. But also, as I've said before, he is a man that is determined to get back to this. We're told that he hopes that by the summer he is going to be stepping up the amount of public-facing duties that he's doing again. Of course, that will be entirely reliant on what his doctors advise him to, one would assume. But we're told that he is very keen to be certainly back and out meeting the public in time for the D-Day anniversary when that takes place over the summer. But look, when you look at pictures like this of him out and about and looking happy, it certainly does seem like there is a determination on his part to kind of get back to what he loves doing.
Smiles all round, Katie, as the King and Queen conclude chatting to people, but they really spent some time there shaking hands with practically everybody at the front of those crowds next to the ropes, and the crowds waving back. They were smiling as well. Lots of goodwill towards the King as he continues his treatment for cancer, and their car with the Royal Standard aboard it now leaves St George's Chapel. Won't have too far to go, of course, to Windsor Castle. But let's bring in, Katie, thanks for now. Let's bring in our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce, who joins me now. Alistair, I know you won't necessarily have seen those pictures there, but hearing that the King has had that, or perhaps organised, perhaps impromptu walkabout alongside the Queen, you would take that as a good sign, would you?
Oh, yes. I watched all the pictures with you, in fact, and the King was brought out from St George's Chapel, and a chance to have a very good conversation with a number of people who have been brought into the lower ward, which is the area of Windsor Castle around the chapel, which was established principally so that there was a place for the community of the College of St George. He's escorted out there by the Dean of Windsor, who is the Right Reverend Christopher Coxworth. He was appointed only at the end of last year, so this is his first Easter with the King and Queen. And as is traditional, a posy presented by a family from the very community in which St George's acts as a sort of centre and home. So for the King and Queen, this is a return to some degree of normality. On a very special day, Easter has its place in the Christian calendar. The King is Supreme Governor of the Church of England, and he will have attended Holy Communion this morning in the private chapel at Windsor. So in a sense, he's doing exactly what he wanted to do on Easter Day with all his family who are available, who will probably be having lunch with him in the castle later on, in a way gathering like many families will want to on this extremely special holiday.
Do you think it symbolises, Alistair, the King's stoicism towards his diagnosis and wanting to just carry out his duties, be out there, shaking hands with people who spent time waiting for him to leave the chapel?
Well, I'm not in a position to guess either how he is viewing his current situation or what a burden it must be to go through the various treatments that he has to face. But at the same time, I think we witnessed in his coronation a determination to dedicate himself, as he has said again and again in messages, to the tasks in hand. And he has been fulfilling his duties by constantly meeting those ambassadors who were appointed to the Court of St James here in the United Kingdom, or meeting his Prime Minister and others who are important to the process of government, doing what he needs to do, but getting in amongst people, which actually he's very good at. And, you know, he will be reluctant to get back into the State Bentley and leave a group of people who've come out to see him on this day, when, you know, that's what he really enjoys doing. But when he gets to talk to people, he has a very natural way. He has always wanted to have those moments and to make the most of them when they come. And he's really been denuded of so much of that during this period where he's been facing those treatments.
We hear from the palace, Alistair, that this is a bit of an not an about turn, that's the wrong turn of phrase, a bit of a step change in terms of His Majesty being out there, being a bit more public. Just looking a bit further ahead, now we're in British summertime, there's more to come on this. Katie talked about the D-Day celebrations, and of course, there is the monarch's official birthday to look to as well.
Yes, the marking of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which was such a key moment in the Second World War, when finally the cards were turned against the tyranny that was Nazi Germany. And I think with Europe facing times, the King will be very aware of that, because he'll be being kept informed of so much of the news that perhaps we don't always hear about the situation of the world and of the United Kingdom within it. And so emerging from Easter service in St George's Chapel, I think, you know, we know he has a very busy summer ahead. What parts of it he can and can't take part in will become clear later on. But you were mentioning the King's birthday parade in June. He will want to be a part of that. He will want to come back here to St George's Chapel for the service of the Order of the Garter that has been based here, and is the reason it was really built the way it is back in the 1400s. You know, it is part of that mix of being today the head of state who is emblematic of an advancing and progressing political process, whilst at the same time being the deep keel for that. And the King has not enjoyed being away from the public eye and being part of the community that he is there to serve.
Alistair, thank you so much for joining us this lunchtime. Just to remind those viewers watching, this is King Charles III meeting people outside St George's Chapel, having appeared for that Easter Sunday service and greeting people in the crowd alongside the Queen, Camilla there. Plenty of well-wishers turning out to speak to him in the hope that they will get the chance and shake his hand, which many of them did. The King meeting them on this first official appearance since his cancer diagnosis last month.